This week, Rich and Rick from CryptoniteNXT will join us for our feature interview. Articles for discussion include Disagree and Commit, startups most likely to succeed, 5 CTAs secretly sabotaging your sales emails, how to pitch your apps to investors, how to calculate your total addressable market. In the startup and security news you need to know, Steve Case's $150 million raise, Thales acquired Gemalto, not Atos. Interesting. The rumor is that Amazon may make an acquisition in security and more. All on this episode of Startup Security Weekly. This is Security Weekly. For security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show about security startups, how to secure your startup, and advice for security startups. It's Startup Security Weekly.
I need it from the top.
Brought to you by, make sure your team is prepared to fight off the latest cybersecurity threat. IT Pro TV is the resource to keep you and your IT team skills up to date. You can stream IT Pro TV's courses live and on demand worldwide, so there's no need to send staff to off-site training. Their team solution provides access to a supervisor portal for full control over your team's training schedule and group analytics. Go to itpro.tv/startup security and use the code SS30 to try it free for 7 days and receive 30% off your monthly membership for the lifetime of your active subscription. To learn more about IT Pro TV's team solution, sign up for a free demo of their supervisor portal. Are you looking for a career where you can make a real difference? Accenture Security is looking for passionate, creative minds to tackle some of the biggest security threats facing us today. Innovative thinkers who want to outmaneuver cybercriminals. They're hiring specialists across the spectrum, from security strategy to cyber defense, digital identity, and application security, helping to deliver holistic solutions. If you want to use next-generation technologies and global resources to change the future of security, visit accenture.com/security careers. Welcome, everyone, to episode 67 of Startup Security Weekly. It's our last show before the holiday break. Very excited for the holidays and very excited for the new year in 2018. We've had a lot of great meetings and have some great plans for 2018. The Santa himself, the Sand Hobo Santa, Mr. Michael Santarcangelo is here with us. He's got his Santa hat. What's going on, Michael? How are you?
I'll try to make this work with the headset. I'll see if I can get something working for the break. It's good. You know, when you're on the beach, you guys are all talking about snow and snow banks. It's only gonna be 68 here tomorrow, so I'm not sure what to do with myself. Nope, we're gonna go have a picnic. That's what we're gonna do.
There you go.
You know, it's funny, Paul, because every week we're like, oh, it's the one time we get to see each other. I've seen you more, I think, this week. Maybe the last 2 weeks.
I think we're fixing that issue.
Yeah, that's done. We talk regularly, so it's good. But I'll tell you, because it's one of those things where it's the last show of the year. It's one of the last shows of this format as Startup Security Weekly, as we get ready to transition over to Business Security Weekly. And in case anybody's worried, we're going to keep the startup flair in terms of the innovation and letting you know what's happening in terms of the industry overall. But it's going to let us focus on a lot of the stuff, right? A lot of the CISOs listening, a lot of the security leaders, or the business. We've had some business folks that are pretty security minded say, yeah, that's great. Hey, I'm learning how to run my team better. I'm learning how to be more effective on the business side of things. And so that gives us that chance to go focus on that a little bit. And I'm pretty jazzed up about that. It's exciting stuff as we're looking forward to the year ahead, along with a few other things that we have planned. So I'm amped. I'm glad we're going to take a break, but I'm pretty looking forward to 2018.
It very likely could be the last Startup Security Weekly as we make the transition in the new year to Business Security Weekly. You know, there's some things we need to do to make that happen, and our team is working diligently. Thank you all for doing that. A couple of new things in 2018 I want to mention. Make sure you go to securityweekly.com/on-demand. You can find our on-demand series of webcasts. There's 4 there now, and there are 6 more on-demand webcasts scheduled for 2018 on topics such as Active Directory security, endpoint detection and response, incident response in the enterprise. Penetration testing has already been recorded and will debut in January.
Nice.
So subscribe to our mailing list, securityweekly.com/insider, or go directly to our on-demand website, securityweekly.com/on-demand, and you're able to register for all of those webcasts, which is exciting. Our first webcast in January will also be with Domain Tools, talking about how to use domains and IP addresses and the vast amounts of information they collect to find interesting things in your network. I'm super excited about that content as well. Also, Application Security Weekly will be debuting in January as well. Keith Hoodlet and I and Michael already had our one of many planning sessions for that show. We've got a list of guests, a list of topics, and partners to work with that are sponsoring the show, which is fantastic. IT Pro TV is, of course, one of our longstanding sponsors this year. They're signed on for next year, and we couldn't be happier with all the content, the people, the training, and the programming that they have at itpro.tv. Over your holiday break, if you're listening to this, make sure you visit our friends at itpro.tv/startup security. The code is SS30. Make sure you go there and do some training over your holiday break. I think it's a fantastic time to do that. Get immersed in that content, and when you come in January, make that recommendation to your employer that they should be buying a subscription for everyone at your organization. I think this is a great way to get training out to your organization. We've gotten some fantastic feedback recently about itpro.tv.
Yeah.
A lot of people have listened to the show, taken the time to send us feedback and say, hey, I got around to registering for itpro.tv, and I'm really digging it. And so we're super happy to hear that positive feedback about our partners. So,
well, yeah, and since this is the startup/business side of things too, it's a good investment in your people. You and I've talked about that, and we've looked at that in other ways too. But this is what I like about itpro.tv in particular is their approach. Like when we've had them on the program and we've looked at it, we said, okay, how do you do it? It's a combination of looking at what their audience wants and needs, looking at the industry, and then going and finding good voices and bringing them in. It's a good investment to level up your team and keep people engaged. So that's and I'm glad that they're going to keep partnering with us in the new year. I want to point out again too, one of the things that I've really enjoyed, especially as you and I've been talking about this a lot over the last couple of weeks, is we talk a lot in this program about category and category design. In fact, in our interview today, we're going to talk about that. And we've been looking at that as well in terms of this grew from you doing a show in your basement over 10 years ago to an entire network, and it's helped us understand that there's a community and there's an industry, and of course there's overlap between the two. But what I think you've put really well is it's about solving the problems that we face, and it's using the things that we figured out over the years. One of the things that's really impressive is the hosts on this network on average have 15, 20 or more years of experience. And I think somebody pointed out the other day, and are still solving problems. We're still very active in the field. We're still very active solving these types of problems and looking at them from a lot of perspectives. It does feel old. Like I think legally you and I can now shout, "Get off my lawn," and spray people with hoses, which is great. I've been waiting for this for a really long time. And so now that it's arrived, it's great.
Michael, I hate the term as dog food, right? Like eat your own dog food. I don't like that term, but
we're the cobbler's kids that wear shoes.
Yeah. So, I mean, we do in a sense eat our own dog food, right? We use IT Pro's training here in the office for Security Weekly. Many of us are SANS instructors or attend SANS training. We use Pony Express's Pwn Pulse here in the office to monitor our wireless and wired connectivity and get a handle on what's happening here on the network. So there are several examples where these are the tools and techniques and services that we use, and they wouldn't be partners if we weren't able to use them and have an experience and solve our own problems with it. To your point.
Well, yeah, that brings up a point too. We've made that transition this year. We don't call them sponsors; they're partners, right? Sponsors are people that give you money and hope it works out for them. And we're very selective. In fact, that's one of the things that's always impressed me about you, Paul, is that you're very selective about the people that you work with. But what we've realized though is that our audience, which is comprised of industry, like I'm always tickled when somebody who's a partner says, "Oh, well, I'm now using your other partner because I learned about it on your program." You're like, "Well, great. I mean, that's like we are working with good people, and you and I frequently in the last couple of weeks have gotten off calls and been like, wow, that's awesome. Like I love what they're doing. I love how they're approaching it. It's really good. But we do the same thing, right? Because we're going to conferences, we're talking to people regularly, we're engaging on social media. We're going to plan, of course, to do more of that in 2018. But by looking at it from a partner and the success of our partner's perspective, well, the audience is our partner too. So we're going to keep focusing on how to solve the problems that we as a community and an industry face, and bring up the best of it. So yeah, it's exciting times, and I'm excited for everybody who gives us their feedback, because we read it, all of it, and we act on it, and we're doing our best to get back to everybody. But
speaking of that, yeah, we're going to rejuvenate the survey in January as well. So look for that coming soon. I want to run that survey till we have at least 600 responses to our own internal survey, which helps us, number one, with the content that we produce here on Security Weekly. It also helps us identify areas that we can best work with different partners, right? Like, not everyone is the best fit at that particular time. Over the past 13 years, certainly gone through many iterations where it just wasn't the right time to work with someone, or it just wasn't the right fit. But by getting feedback from the audience, we can help better fit both the content that we produce and the partners that we're working with. So,
yeah, and there's more. So we'll talk about it in the coming year, because it's exciting stuff.
It's so weird to read these names, Rich Walchuck and Rick Olesek, representing CryptoniteNXT. Some background for our audience. All three of us worked together at Tenable for quite some time. And now we're all in new roles, and yet we're here together on the show. And a warm welcome to Rich and Rick from CryptoniteNXT. Welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Hey.
It's nice to
be here.
Yeah, it's nice to be in your company yet again, which is awesome. And so now you both have left, we've all parted ways with Tenable in some way, shape, form, or fashion. And I had a great time working with you folks and everyone at Tenable, really. And we all we stick together. It's kind of weird. It's like this secret tribe. Like, if we work together at Tenable, like we have a secret, I don't know, is there a secret handshake or something? Like, we all seem to stick together, which I think is great. So tell me about how you guys landed at CryptoniteNXT.
So I'll go first, Rich. I actually joined probably about 7 months ago. And I came over after leaving Tenable. I went over to a threat intelligence platform, Threat Connect, and spent about just over a year there, and more hunting and identifying threats, taking a reactive approach. Meanwhile, I had spoken with Mike Simon, our CEO, and got a grip of what he was trying to do and accomplish with Kryptonite and their platform. It was a huge differentiator, and it just perfect timing. And I liked the solution and joined about 7 months ago.
Sweet. Rich, what about yourself?
Yeah, I guess on my side, I've been here about 5 months. It's kind of funny. You talked about coming back or getting back together. I think Rick and I have probably worked together at 4 or 5 different companies now.
Nice. Several
different startups. After 8 years at Tenable, I left there back in the spring. Had been talking to Mike Simon here about the technology, and just kept coming back to the conversation because I really just thought it was interesting. I thought the whole moving target defense concept was unique, and no one else is really doing it in the market, or if they are, they're doing it in different contexts where we're focused on the network, they're focused on application or binary obfuscation or other segments. So I just thought it was a unique opportunity and wanted to be a part of it.
Sure. Before we dig into it, Rich, what is your role today at CryptoniteNXT?
So my title is VP of Technical Operations. Obviously, we're small, a startup, so pretty much that means I do a little bit of everything, whatever's needed. But mostly I'm focused on product management, strategy, deployment, working with the R&D team, get involved in testing. So yeah, it's a little bit of everything. You never know what the day is going to bring.
And Rick, how about yourself?
I'm the Chief Revenue Officer, so I own alliances, partnerships, our integrations, sales, anything associated with our messaging and how we're going to market.
Why call it Chief Revenue instead of like Head of Sales, VP Sales, or something like that? Is there a reason, or it just sounded better? You didn't want to be the sales guy?
So it goes a lot further than just sales. It's messaging, it's understanding our integrations and our alliances.
I like
Sales
that.
is
Okay.
absolutely a huge aspect of it, but more than just, revenue. It's the alliances.
I like it. That's really cool. All right. So when Mike was on the program, you guys were still in stealth. So what's happened since that time in terms of what you guys are doing?
So we came out of stealth about 2 months ago, and we've refined a lot of our messaging. We've done some product enhancements associated to our capabilities, and really kind of figured out how we want to target the segments we want to target and our messaging associated to them.
When we look at stuff, then, so the question we always love to ask is, what's the problem that you solve? And I know we're going to talk a little bit in a second here about category and stuff like that. But like, if you just kind of take a look at it, the genesis, if somebody says, what do you guys do? And what's the problem then that you're focusing on solving in our industry / community today?
So a lot of it is networks weren't built for security. There's no secret to that. It was availability and connectivity. And we've come out with a lot of different security products and capabilities associated to being reactive and monitoring and looking for and hunting. Our approach is very different, where almost back to where the firewall days, we're taking a proactive stance. We're actually taking the advantage back from the adversaries and trying to address where networks are typically very static and have weak controls down in the infrastructure. And that's been kind of proven over the last year with all the different iterations of malware that's been able to propagate throughout networks.
All right. So then we talked about when you come to this and you're trying to solve a problem like this, and you guys paid Paul and I a nice compliment in the prep in terms of listening to our show we did with Matt Alderman talking about categories and building on the stuff around Play Bigger. And then we had a little chat about Gartner and how they're not really sure how to categorize you. So what has that done? Like, let's talk for a minute about category, and let's talk about the category you'd like to have. Because frankly, I think Paul and I would say, claim it, design it. This is your chance. Let's drive the stake in the ground.
Don't let someone else
right
define
here.
it, right?
Yeah. So this is yours. So what's your? So instead of telling us what you'd like it to be, what's your category?
So our category is absolutely moving target defense. It's our differentiator as a product. Although we have capabilities associated to segmentation, our claim to fame is the moving target, being able to make segments of the network invisible and address high vulnerability use cases. Where that currently isn't a category, that's where we compete best.
So give us a taste of what those use cases are like.
So we look at it from typical architectures will have legacy systems, maybe running XP. Those are high use cases, vulnerable to attack, medical devices, IoT devices, ICS systems. And then there's a more overarching, use case associated to patching. Every time a new vulnerability happens or is announced, people are constantly going out on every forum going patch, which absolutely you have to do and keep your patches up to date. But there's a gap between the time a vulnerability is announced to the time that it's actually able to be deployed. So what we do is we provide an additional layer of security to make those systems invisible to the network. So you can't see what services they're running, what operating system, what ports, and exploit them.
Well, yeah, and doesn't that lend us to the point too? I mean, I don't know about the rest of you, but a lot of times when we see that there's a major breach, people say, "Oh, Monday morning quarterback, if they had just patched." I mean, it's easy to patch, and usually when somebody says that, my instinct is, "Oh, so you've never patched in an enterprise before," or "It's not as simple as you're making it out to be." But when you start talking about ICS or medical systems or things like that, sometimes the answer is, "Oh yeah, no, you can't patch. Sorry." Like there's not a patch available, or I don't even know how we're still supporting that operating system, or by regulation, yeah, you can't really patch. And so what you're saying is in those cases, if you can obfuscate or you can otherwise make it difficult or impossible for an attacker, you're giving yourself at least some cushion or an advantage. Am I understanding that right?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's really, by cloaking devices or making them invisible to the network, you're not able to attack what you can't see. And that's how we're taking the advantage back from adversaries and malicious code. We're able to eliminate full categories of the most common
and code.
attacks.
So you're not just worried about somebody coming in actively attacking and sitting at a keyboard. You're actually also able to obfuscate and essentially stop or slow down code looking for things.
Yeah, absolutely. So like in the case of like ransomware, it's going to scan and start doing reconnaissance immediately after, whether it's a phishing email, whether it's malware that someone downloaded on their software, or even an insider threat. The first step in the kill chain is to perform reconnaissance, whether that's active reconnaissance to identify where else it can move laterally within the network. Because of how we deploy our security appliance, we obfuscate all of the neighboring IP addresses, and with the combination of segmentation and moving target defense, it stops it from propagating.
We were having a conversation recently with John Strand, and we were talking about how many, both in the community and the industry, are using the term lateral movement. I don't think it's as descriptive as it needs to be, because as you're describing, Rick, the lateral movement is not just about movement. There's multiple steps in there, as you said, the kill chain, which is a marketing term. I'll forgive you for that. But when an attacker gains a foothold, email phishing certainly, right? I get on the end user workstation. The first thing the attacker or the automated malicious code, malicious payload that they're delivering has to do is start to identify a map or build a map of the environment. And map isn't just what IP addresses, it's what applications, what domain names, what user accounts are available to me, where the Active Directory structure is, what's available to me in this map. And then prioritizing that map and saying, okay, when I want to now jump from one system to another or attack another application, that's the second step in your lateral movement. And then the process really starts all over again once you jump to that other system and finding information on it. So do you agree with that kind of assessment? And how does CryptoniteNXT look at that problem and help define that problem for people? Because I think they know they have a lateral movement problem, but they don't fully understand what that means.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. So
yeah, absolutely.
Oh, go ahead, Rich.
No, I was just going to say absolutely. I mean, that's our goal, is really to, stop that reconnaissance, stop that process very early in the kill chain. And we do that really by controlling the visibility and the topology of the network. So even if you're trying to do passive reconnaissance, the data that you collect and sort of say, let's, data for a period of time and try to identify weaknesses or security controls that are in place, and then you come back later to try to act on that. When you come back later, you would see a entirely different network topology, right? So, we shift the IP addresses, we shift the, number of devices you have visibility to. We really control and just, try to confuse the attacker.
So would you say there's an element of deception? And I was very careful in my wording, as a lot of security vendors will kind of pigeonhole themselves into the deception category, and that I think has not a high opinion as it should in our industry. But if there's an element of deception, it also sounds like there's an element of network admission control, which is another term that we don't like. But combining those two together, for me, really represents security vendors that are very innovative and thinking hard about the problems we have and coming up with a very innovative solution by combining some of those things together. So would you say it includes both a network admission control component as well as a deception component, but working in conjunction?
Yeah, we do. I mean, obviously, right, nobody likes that NAC term, but we do have an authentication component, right? So we do both device registration and end user authentication, either direct authentication through us or a pass-through through like Radius or .1x or Aruba ClearPass, whatever you may have, to make the sort of the onboarding process seamless to the user. But so there's definitely that NAC component, and then sort of the dynamics of the network that we're providing. Essentially we put the user into sort of an isolated segment, basically a segment of one where there's no other device on the network. So any IP that they try to scan, or if they're trying to access like a peer device, they just simply don't exist in the network. And then when we provide a service or an application to a user, the IP that they connect to, when they do their DNS resolution or whatever, the IP that gets returned is basically sort of like a /32, right? It's a network of one address. So even if they see that address is in use and they try to look for neighboring devices, again, they just simply don't exist in their view of the network.
So how, in this scenario, how does the user do their job and access resources on the network?
So just like they normally would, right? So you do a DNS lookup for an application. We return sort of an ephemeral IP or a token IP to that user that's good for a period of time. They access the application, just like they would normally. And they for the most part, the user wouldn't even know that we exist.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think this is fascinating, and at some point, I think digging into that technology might be fun, but. We also talked about something else that I think was kind of curious, and so I want to set it up this way, and then I'll let you guys talk about it. One of the questions that I asked, and people know I ask pretty pointed questions, was, "Oh, okay, this sounds great," and we talked about the challenge of defining your category. We talked about the challenge of getting people to pay attention and how there's a lot of education at stake. And I said, okay, well, what's it cost? The reason I ask that, when I ask that of anybody, and I ask this, by the way, if I'm talking to you as a CISO or a security leader, is I want to know what your authority is. Can you spend $20,000 on something, $25,000 at $50,000? Can you do it, or do you need to go ask somebody else? Is it one signature or two signatures? What if it's $100,000? This stuff is always going to matter. So I asked it of you guys, and frankly, I didn't know what you'd say, and you kind of laughed and you went, "Yeah, well, here we've got an answer for the standard stuff, but we've done something different." And I'm actually kind of excited about that approach. So I'm kind of curious. Go ahead, tell us what you did that's different. And I would love to hear some of the backstory of how you figured out how to do that, how it's working so far, and what you expect from it.
So we do have an appliance. It's you can purchase it, and with that, we wanted to drive early adoptions. We wanted to make an investment in the technology that we have and have skin in the game and have a true partnership between us and our end users. So just recently, we released a service model where you can, or a subscription model, which would reduce the lower costs of entry point to be able to acquire an appliance and have it in production. And we'll basically amortize that over a 36-month period and bill either on a monthly or annual basis. So in essence, what we're doing is offering an appliance for ends up being under $1,000 per month to be able to test, and we have to prove our worthiness of our product and our capabilities to sustain the customer.
Yeah, those are the two things that I liked when we were talking about it. You were like, yeah, I can do it for under $12,000 a year. I was like, cool, hold on. I mean, month to month, I mean, there's a number of CISOs and security leaders listening right now that are like, I could put that on a credit card. No one would ever bug me about it. Mm-hmm. At least enough to prove that it works. But I think that that's really important because, Paul, you and I always look at, in fact, it's kind of interesting, right? What's one of the themes that we've had since we started this program? Just get your first customer. Just get your first $1,000. Just get them to give you $1,000 again. And so I feel like you guys are, almost the poster children for a lot of the stuff that we've talked about. And I mean that as a compliment. But what I kind of listened to and what I liked was it's not hopefully you're not engaging in a really long, complicated sale. Instead, you're kind of looking at things in a perspective of, I get it. You've got to test it out. You maybe don't have a lot of money to risk to figure out if it works or not. So I'll tell you what, we'll put our skin in the game and we're going to prove to you that it works. And I think that's really good. So when did you guys implement this program and how's that going so far?
So we implemented it when we came out of stealth mode, and we've had very good feedback. And I should probably reiterate, when we came out of stealth mode, with a customer base. So we have existing commercial customers. We already had a product in the market, in production. So what we wanted to do was drive the adoption. When we came out of stealth mode, we introduced this program to be able to help foster the adoption and really drive additional sales and relationships that we could capitalize on. The other thing that I kind of going back to the technology side of it, one thing that I do want to iterate is that the moving target defense piece that we implement with our technology is a zero configuration portion of the technology. When you install it, the moving target defense works without configuration. The segmentation piece, that's a little bit more configuration where you're building your users, your groups, and your policies. But that's why we think the moving target defense is our claim to fame.
And that's a great point, Rick. And I'm glad you brought that up. Many, CISOs especially will ask about the deployment. How easy or difficult is it on a scale, and whatever that scale is, right? How easy or difficult is it for them to start recognizing value from the product? And vendors fall on a varying scale, as Michael and I have really dug into this year, to in 15 minutes, I can have it inside of my product, and I can be recognizing value from a cloud-based interface, all the way to, well, we have to put hardware on your network, and we have to have consultants and take some time to do that. And I don't think there's necessarily fundamentally anything wrong with either approach, but kind of where do you fall on the scale, and how do you answer the question of how easy or difficult is that deployment till I get to the point where I'm recognizing value?
So the deployment is relatively easy. It really depends on how well you know your architecture, how well defined prior and the use cases, whether you're doing production systems, endpoints, if there's a specific segment or enclave that you're protecting. The installation itself can be done pretty quickly, and then the moving target defense piece works automatically. The segmentation, we typically recommend to start with an open policy. We have some canned rules and policies that you can put in place, which are just generic in nature of things that should not happen in a network, and then kind of tweak that policy over time and refine it.
So if I wanted to protect my endpoints, I acquire this appliance, I give it a span port or integrate it in my network, and I'm pretty much off to the races, and then I can build on that.
Exactly.
Okay. That's cool. Michael, more questions for our guest today?
No, I mean, I asked most of the stuff I was really curious about, because it's like if you think about it, we've covered a startup coming out of stealth that's figured out it makes a lot more sense to design and claim your own category. They've got some pretty interesting use cases that I think, quite frankly, a lot of people are dealing with. I mean, I dealt with systems that couldn't be patched 20 years ago. Things haven't changed. I mean, that's not a new problem for people to take a look at. And, we've always looked at obfuscation, at least from my perspective in the industry, but it's always been one of those, man, we create more problems for ourselves than we know what to do with. And as you pointed out, Paul, we're getting to a point in the industry where we can take things that we may have at one point liked or not liked over the last 20 years, but we're watching people put them together in a really cool new way. And then what I'm really kind of personally taken with is, you can go to a CISO who buys in and get them started for as little as $1,000 or so a month, and let them have actual evidence and carry that to somebody else. I think that's really compelling as a startup, and you're trying to prove product market fit. You're trying to get traction, trying to show someone that if you want them to invest in you, that you've got a good run rate and renewal rate and everything else. I mean, it sounds all great to me. So I was pretty excited about it. And then, of course, one day maybe you guys can teach me the secret handshake. But other than that, I mean, it's like I'm excited. Like, I enjoyed that conversation. I enjoyed the things that we got a chance to talk about here today. And I hope it goes as well for you as I think it will.
Yeah. One last question is, Rick and Rich, what's your target market? And it's kind of a twofold question. Like, tell me about your target market and the state and organization to be in order to be ready for the solution.
Rich, you want to start, or do you want me to?
I was going to say, I mean, our target market right now today, for the most part, is because of our size and just coming out of stealth and focusing on early adopters, we started out really in the mid-market space, right? Looking at 500 to 1,000 person companies, and then as we are starting to show success, now we're starting to branch into obviously larger companies, more enterprise, but we're still also, like I said, focusing on some of those very specific use cases that Rick mentioned, the critical controls, ICS environments, medical environments, or even just your traditional user base, mobile workstations, laptops, that sort of thing. You want to add to that, Rick?
No, that absolutely. I think you're dead on with that, and it's really identifying the use cases more so than specific industries. Obviously, with healthcare, you have more medical devices and concerns associated to those versus manufacturing, who typically has legacy systems. They're using XP in production and have done custom development. So those are really more so than segments. We're identifying our market through the use cases and areas that we can protect.
Yeah, and I think that's really smart. Just consulting with various enterprises, many of them have that legacy problem, and they're not necessarily pinned into a specific company size and or industry. That problem takes many shapes and forms, but the underlying issue is still the same: is I have legacy systems to protect, and that can be a great foot in the door, I think, to testing out your solution and be like, wow, look at how it worked to protect our legacy systems. And those legacy systems, hopefully, won't be legacy forever and on the network, XP on the network forever. You can laugh at that.
Comedy continues.
But then you can transition to other points of your network once you've completed all those projects to get XP off your network, like everyone is going to do in 2018, right? That's no more problem with that.
So this is the hopes and wishes episode.
Well, that's the goal. In 2018, we don't have any vulnerabilities, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
And
PKI makes a comeback. It's the year. Hold on.
It's really, from our standpoint, is taking a proactive measure versus continuing to be reactive. Being able to stop activity before it starts. And when we define markets, everybody needs to patch. Everybody needs to keep their systems up to snuff and up to date. So that's kind of why we apply across every industry and pretty much any use case in that respect. And we're able to, from that, be able to have very binary reporting of activity that we stopped.
Fantastic. Rick and Rich, nice talking with you again. Wish you the best of luck. Happy holidays, and thanks for appearing on Startup Security Weekly.
Hey, great. Thanks for having us. Hope you both
Thanks
have a great holiday.
Thanks, guys.
Have a great
You
holiday,
too.
guys. Appreciate it.
With that, we'll take a short break, come back, talk about some startup news on leadership, innovation, and startup success, as well as some news about acquisitions in the security space. Stay tuned.